Hello everybody, and this is a special Europa Universalis IV video. One that I thought to make after recording a bit, because Europa, although extremely fun, is also fairly difficult to get into, and there's not an easy way for the game to explain. I mean, yes, there's a tutorial, but when you're watching someone play, it is remarkably difficult to know what's going on sometimes unless you actually know what's going on. So this is going to be a video to basically explain various things in the game so that way it's better for people to understand who are maybe not familiar with the game. Now, there is no solid goal of Europa. I mean, yes, there are certain missions that a lot of nations have, such as England has the mission to unite the British Isles together to form England. Castile has the mission to form Spain once they take over Aragon, and they all have specialized events. Almost every nation has specialized events, but France does not have a uniting thing, unfortunately. But by and large, the goal of the game is what you make it. Because that's just it. It's kind of like a free play game. If you want to become a trade power and control the world's trade, well, then there's your goal. If you want to just own as much territory as possible, well, there's your goal. If you want to be the leading colonizer in the New World, well, there you go. Obviously some goals are more difficult than others, such as being the leading colonizer in the New World when you're Poland, because you don't even start with a port and you're not necessarily good at colonizing, whereas nations like Castile and Portugal get bonuses in their ability to colonize. As such, it is sometimes doesn't seem like it's good enough for certain people, like, well, what am I supposed to do here? But, you know, I like sandbox games, so I quite like it a lot. Now, this is basically all of the nations that we see in Europe, because obviously it's 1444, not a lot of the Europeans really knew much about what else was beyond besides maybe the Ottoman Empire. There are several screens up in the corner. As you saw when I clicked on this, there's a bunch of tabs. Get that in a moment. As you scroll in, you switch from country view to province view. These are your armies. It is best to have a sizable military, because if you don't have a military, the AI will see you as easy prey. Because there is this nice little thing that, since they're the AI, they can see that stuff, but luckily there is a ledger down here in the corner where you can see all kinds of information. Like if I wanted to look at armies and look at who has the biggest armies in the world, as you can see, I'm in 3rd place. But the AI will use this too, and they'll use it to their advantage, so you really need to be careful and make sure that all of your bases are covered, otherwise you're going to get a nasty surprise. Now, these are the provinces. Every province has different terrain, different buildings, different things in it. Like, for example, this is grassland. It's nice and flat. Therefore, it has more supply limit for an army, because if I click on this army, as you can see, the supply limit in the grasslands is 22, but if I go over here where it's a mountain, it's only 14, because obviously it's a mountain. It decreases the amount of supply limit, and there's also all this other stuff that I won't get to just yet. But it is nice to be in places when you're defending like mountains and woods, because if you're attacking into them, you actually get a penalty on the battle rolls, which I'll get to in a moment. But as you can see from the glowing things here, you can construct buildings. There are numerous buildings. There's ones to decrease the unrest in the territory, which the more unrest there is, the more likely there will be rebels. As you can see, there is a -7 unrest in this territory of Berry, but if there was a positive, there would be peasants that would start to rise up, and they'd have a percent chance to increase by 10% every month until 100%, in which case neutral factioned rebels would pop up that anybody can fight, but generally you'd have to deal with your own stuff. There's also the autonomy. Autonomy means that the territory doesn't give you as much. Less money, less manpower, less everything. And you can increase that to reduce the local unrest, or if it's high enough, you can decrease it to decrease the local unrest, or to increase the local unrest, but obviously you get more from it. And, if you feel confident, you can very easily lower the autonomy of the territories you conquer, because when you conquer a territory, it generally starts with a certain amount of autonomy. The exception to this is if you technically have owned the territory before. Because this is technically part of France, there won't be any autonomy if I conquer this back from England. There's all this other stuff, such as the culture and religion, which if they're different than the ones that you accept, there will be increased unrest and you'll get less money for it, and so on and so forth. But there are some territories, such as, let's say, Poitou, that have a castle in it. Any territory that does not have a castle can be sieged within a month. Just straight up. Castles need to actually be properly sieged, and you can lose men because of attrition of them, the attrition that they gain from just sitting out there and basically starving out a castle. You can actually have them assault a castle, but it costs an exorbitant amount of forces, and it is really only viable if it is absolutely necessary. And also they kind of provide a sphere of influence, so if someone, like say Burgundy, came over here and sieged Berry in a month because it does not have a fort and then walked away, it would automatically switch back over to me because of the sphere of influence from the fort. But on from that, on to here. There are a lot of tabs, and I'm not going to go over every single meticulous detail in them, but this is your government tab. This is your king. You have a kingdom. You can you can change the government type dependent on the technology, because the higher your technology, the different types of monarchies you can get, and some provide different bonuses than others, as you can see here. Obviously, I'm not going to run every single one. This is your king. Your king can actually lead your men. If I click right here, this will make him a leader, not actually as good as the ones that I start with. Your leaders increase the combat effectiveness of the army, obviously. And he also has skills. Every month you get points of administrative, of diplomatic, and military power. These are used for various things, but the most notable thing is upgrading technology. That is the only way you can actually go through the tech tree and upgrade your troops, upgrade the effectiveness of collecting taxes, upgrade this, upgrade that. Basically, just advance. You can also hire advisors. Like if I wanted to, say, make there be less unrest, I could hire this guy. And he has an administrative skill of +1. So if I were to hire him, it costs 16 ducats and 1 a month, but now I get 7 instead of 6. In a diplomacy screen, don't bother with it. That's just your relative relation with a lot of people nearby. In the diplomacy screen, it will fill out very quickly. You'll see your, who you have claims on, so you can fight them, who you're allied with, who has given you the ability to walk through your territory, who people are at war with, because I can click on anybody and look at this. Like if I click on England, they're allied with Portugal at the start of the game, and they hate Castile, Burgundy, and me. There is the rival system, where you get increased stuff, just general stuff, from fighting rivals, and there is a couple additional options that you get when negotiating with them in a war. And there is the economy screen. You can look at where you get your money, where it's going. You can decrease the maintenance of your troops if you're at peace and feel confident that you don't need them combat ready. Of course, then it takes a few months for them to get combat ready, same with your fleet. And that is basically here. You can take loans, but then they'll increase the inflation in the nation, and the higher that is, the more everything costs. The more it costs to maintain people, the more it costs to get advisors, the more it costs to build things, everything. And there is the trade tab. That is not something you really need to worry too much about as a watcher. As a player, you might want to look into it a little bit, because depending on where you send them, they will collect different amounts of money, and there is this entire trade network here. As you can see, different places feed into different locations, and you'd have to study it a little bit in order to actually memorize it, so obviously I'm not going to go very much into it. And then here is the technology screen. I'll switch it back to the country view. My technology group is Western. If I were to say click on Hungary, for example, they're in Eastern tech. Eastern techs are 20% more expensive, and then the Ottomans are 25%. And then if you come all the way over here, they are 75% because they're steppe nomads. And you can eventually change that. You can westernize, as they say, into to have the Western tech group, so things are cheaper for you, but that obviously costs time and considerable money, and it's just a very large investment, and you need to be far enough behind the technology to do it anyway. Let's go back to my country. And as you can see, can unlock the different monarchies, and then you get different ships and better troops as you go through the tech tree, as I said. And there's all this other stuff that is different compared to what type of tech you're talking about. But I will get to the military thing near the end. This is generally for colonization. Colonization is only important if you want to be a colonial nation, which does have its own difficulties and challenges, but I'm not going to really cover that in this because that's more specific to if I'm playing that. Then there is also the ideas. Every nation has its own idea group. I obviously have the French ideas, so I get more manpower, I have a better diplomatic reputation, which is something I forgot to explain, I'll get to that in a moment, and I also have better discipline, which I'll get to when I get to military. And that discipline is only after I've completed these ideas. Now, as I unlock an idea, which I can pick from any one of these, and they all have various bonuses, and then they have a bonus when you complete it, but as you spend points, the points that I talked about from here, in the ideas, which obviously I can't even get an idea until I have admin tech of 5, every one you get will increase this bar by 1/3, and then once you get it 3 times, you will unlock your first idea. Then again for your second, so on and so forth. And then once you've gotten enough national ideas, then you'll fill out the bar entirely. There is more possible national ideas than there is for your country ideas here. Then there is also the mission screen, which you briefly saw when I was looking if France had a special mission. Special missions would be in green, like for example for Castile to form Spain, it would be a green one, because a green one is generally very important and has a game-changing effect, such as you changing, your nation. But there are these missions that will pop up, such as solidify papal relations, yearly papal influence, or England must be driven from France. And they all have various things. Certain ones are special to your nation, such as, the one against against England as France. And you get these various bonuses, and they're just a nice thing to help guide you in the right direction and give a little bit of bonus if you're doing well enough. There's also all of the national decisions, which all do different things. There's like for example, that one's a French one to move my court, but I need an admin tech of high enough. And generally those would just have to be a case-by-case basis. Next is the stability and expansion. As you fight in wars, your people will start to grow tired, especially if your own territory is being sieged or if you lose a battle. Your war exhaustion will rise fairly quickly. War exhaustion will increase the national unrest and make certain things cost more to do, and I believe they might even make your army fight less effectively. Obviously, you don't want your national unrest high enough, because if your national unrest is high enough, then rebels start to pop up. If rebels start to pop up, then you have more people you need to fight, which is not good. The counteract to this is the stability. As you can see, each level of negative stability gives stuff, each level of positive stability gives stuff, and it costs power, and there is also random events to gain or lose stability. Generally, you want your stability as high as possible, but also it is best to not constantly spend admin power to put it up to +3, because it may cost 100 now, but then it'll cost 150, and then I believe subsequently 200 to increase it to +2 and +3 respectively. Then there is the religion page. The religion page it's not really important in the early game, but once the game goes on for long enough, the Protestant Reformation will happen somewhere in Germany, and they will start to automatically spread their religion to other territories, because they will have religious centers that will send out missionaries and secretly convert your stuff. I need a drink for a moment. They will send out missionaries to convert your stuff, and obviously you don't want that, because if it's a different religion, it increases the unrest, and obviously there is also the religious unity, which is a good indicator of that. There's also Cardinals. France starts with 3 for the papal screen. Now, in the papal screen, you have papal influence, which the more cardinals you have, the friendlier you are with the papal state, all that stuff increases the amount you get a month. And if you get enough, you can get different things, such as my favorite, have 100 papal influence and you gain a stability, just like that. But there's one for, for loans, there's one for legitimacy, which is something up here which I haven't gotten to yet. There's one to get more taxes for a while. All this various stuff. Generally, that is only a pertinent thing for Catholics, but because different religions have different things, like if I were to play the Mamluks or the Ottomans, for example, who are Muslim, there is an entirely different setup, because although they don't interact with the Pope, they have a different system to play with their religion, and generally all religious groups have such a thing, whether it be Native American or Mesoamerican or Confucian or so on and so forth. Then lastly is the military screen. This just gives you general information on how effective your stuff is, because if I was, say, Poland, for example, I believe they get a bonus to the combat effectiveness of their cavalry. This is generally just something you need to pay attention to if you're into the game, if you're trying to make your army as good as possible, but by and large it's not that useful. Then there is all this various stuff like army tradition, makes your army work better, and the only way you can get that is random events or by winning or losing battles, just being in battles. But most importantly, there is your force limit. Every nation has a maximum force limit, and the only way to increase this is to either have more land, There's certain ideas, and there's a couple buildings you can build to increase it. If you go over your force limit, each unit costs twice as much to maintain. Not good. Same for ships, although ships don't cost as much as maintaining a regiment of troops. And then there's stuff like discipline and military tactics, which help just your general combat effectiveness, and it is something that you really just want as high as possible, because the lower it is, the less better your troops are going to do. And you can disable your forts to make them cost half as much to maintain here, or you can do it in the province screen, and all that stuff. Lastly, up here, just a bunch of banners, such as the warning banners like too few rivals, you have free advisor slots, you can build stuff in provinces, you have no mission, you can pass a mission, and all that stuff. But up here, some money. It gives you a brief thing on how much money you gain or lose, but you can look at that better in the economy screen. Your manpower is very important because you only get a certain amount a month. As you can see, I gained 325, and you have a maximum limit. As your troops get injured in combat, as you can see they're in regiments of 1,000, as your troops get injured in combat, they will reinforce with new blood, which is here, the manpower. If your manpower is 0, your armies will not reinforce unless they will only reinforce with the amount that you gain a month. And then once all of your regiments are fully healed, then you'll start to gain. Obviously, you can edit this a bit, because if you're not maintaining your army, then there's no reinforcements going to them, and the less you're maintaining them, the less regiments recharge. Thing you can see your stability on at a glance, your prestige. As you can see here, I have 4, and it increases a bunch, or helps with a bunch of stuff. So obviously, the better your prestige, the more stuff you get, which is, again, you can only get from events, combat, and you can get some ideas to increase the amount that you get per month just naturally, or decrease its decay. As you can see, it decays over time. And there is also the legitimacy. Legitimacy is fairly important for kingdoms. It does sometimes change to different things, such as if you're a republic, for example, like Genoa is, that changes how it works, or if you're a theocracy like the Papal State, that's different. But they all generally have this, and generally the higher it is, the better it is. Lastly, power projection. Power projection, not something you really need to pay attention to too much. Basically, if you have it high enough, as you can see there, you get bonuses. But the only way you can get it high enough is by doing stuff against your rival. So if I were to rival England and then take my territories back, that would give me a sizable chunk of power projection. There's also this thing in combat where you can, in a war, that you can get them humiliated. And it costs a sizable amount of the war strength, also called war score, which I'll quickly just show in a moment, to do it, but it gives you a humongous amount of power projection, and if you really want that bonus, it is the best way to do it. And also at a glance, you can see the amount of power you have, how many merchants you have, your colonists, idle diplomats, and missionaries. Now, I'm just going to click on Brittany right here and quickly use them as an example. As you can see, there are different tabs here to do stuff, such as offering an alliance, supporting independence. Like if I were to click over at Sweden, I could attempt to support their independence because they start in a personal union with Denmark. But then there's stuff like vassalizing them, guaranteeing their independence, improving relations, getting a royal marriage with them, because since we're both kingdoms, we can do that. And it's all to improve relations. Because if the relation is good enough, they will ally you. For example, as you can see here, they really would like an alliance with me. Now, if I were to click on England, for example, they really would not. Because they hate me, that's a negative 1,000, because they're rivals, negative 1,000. Same deal with Burgundy. If I were to click on you, you would actually like it. But if I were to click on someone really powerful but really far, actually they would nearly do it, interestingly enough. Since I'm France, it is very easy to get things. Ottoman opinion, just because it is a negative 30. If I get it positive high enough, that negative 1,000 would go away, but then I'd still have 13 of 68 reasons. You can see why that's marginally annoying. But then you can do covert actions, such as supporting their rebels. There's a lot of these things you can only do if you get a certain idea group, but there is also fabricating claims. Fabricating claims is the only probably the most important thing to do in this game, and I'll show you why in a moment. There's also economy, like sending a gift to make them happy or offering a loan. Generally the AI don't go over that. And access, such as getting military access through their nation. Now, oh, Provence is a rival of me. Actually, I'll do it with Provence. Okay. So, if I were to attempt to move my men, as you can see, it doesn't move, but they do want to move to different territories. Now, if I were to go to Brittany and ask for access, I can just walk right through. Just like that. They can cancel it anytime, though. But one of the most important things is you always need to fabricate a claim before you fight somebody. Because if you don't fabricate a claim, you lose stability. You gain war exhaustion, and you also get aggressive expansion. If there are nations that have high enough aggressive expansion, they can do this thing called forming a coalition. If they form a coalition, that's basically saying, hey, you done goofed. You can deal with a coalition if it's small enough or before it really blows out of control, but what a coalition will do is if it thinks it is strong enough, all of its members will declare war on you at once. That's a problem. I'm going to quickly show battle just by... Well, I already asked you for the thing. Do they have... Okay, that does have a fort. I can see it on the map. So I am going to declare war on Provence. As you can see, I lost stability, but this is just to show how things go. I can now walk in their territory because obviously I'm invading them. As you can see, there's that little symbol there, much like on my territories, meaning they have a fort. And Brittany obviously allowed me through their nation. I should also speed up time. As you can see, time goes by every day and then gets to month. As you can see here, fort, negative 49%. That basically means, with the combination of all of these things, that increases the roll chance of it increasing. If it's above 0, every chance there is a tick, as you can see by the bar that's filling on the side, every tick there is a chance above 0% that you will win the siege. Obviously, as you can see, because this has nothing on it, no defenders, it will be sieged within a month regardless. With this fort, I need at least 6 regiments to continually siege it, otherwise there will not be enough men to siege it. But for now, let's merely walk over here and assault their army real quick before I wrap up this very rough but very long intro. And a bunch of things just popped up. You can turn these on and off. I generally keep them on because I like to know when the AI are doing certain things, but a lot of them were just people embargoing each other, which obviously does economical damage to people you dislike. And I did not get there in time. As you can see, he is continuing to move here. That is because if a unit is 50% of the way to getting there, they cannot simply turn around. But as you can see here, it's the combat screen. Because I went into hills and a river crossing, which if I click on here and look here, there's a river crossing between them and all those other territories, I get -1 to my rolls. But I have so many more men that the rolls don't matter. As you can see, their morale is decreasing rapidly. When their morale gets to 0, if you haven't already destroyed their troops, what's left will retreat. If they don't have any morale, when you walk on them, they'll basically be instantly destroyed. If you overwhelm them enough, it doesn't matter if they have morale, they'll be destroyed. If you have a general that is much, much better than theirs, it doesn't matter. The army will be destroyed. There's a lot of ways to get your army entirely wrecked in this game. But, you know. There's all this stuff such as comparing your army to them, how much morale, military tactics, discipline, and so on. And you can see here, like if you put your cursor over this, you can see, you know, what they're firing at, what they're able to hit, and so on. It's generally stuff I don't pay very much attention to. I mean, I pay attention to the combat width, as you can see here, because obviously, if you're in the mountains, there's less combat width, meaning only so many people can fight at one time, which might make a battle go on for longer, or make their, like 300, make their numbers count for nothing. That is actually a viable strategy. But by and large, that is basically what you need to know. I mean, there's a few things I didn't cover, such as in detail diplomacy, or, you know, how all of the religion works, or colonization. But actually, before I go, let's look at the peace screen. If I had a reason to fight them, there would be the reason here, such as if I fabricated a claim on Maine, then since I had taken Maine, I would have a ticking war score. As you can see here, I have 12% because I won a battle and I have a territory occupied. And I have a ticking war score up to 25. And if they had it, they would have a ticking war score up to ticking negative war score up to 25. But as you can see, just real quickly right here, I can demand various things from them. They obviously don't want to give anything to me because I haven't done enough. I haven't sieged any of their territories, so they're like, no, it's not enough. But I can demand territories, I can make them cancel their subject that they have. As you saw, there's a different flag here. Can make them release a nation if there is a nation within their borders, such as you can see, grayed out flag, it means that. But I can make them annul treaties, such as military access or alliances or all that stuff. I can try and get them my vassal, make them pay me money, enforce the ability to walk through them. All that various stuff. And in that list would also be the humiliate thing I mentioned before. But that is basically all I can think of. So until next time, see ya.